Good evening, everyone. This is Michael Romali here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 15th, 2019, recorded around 5:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tropical storm Humberto continues to intensify with maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour and a pressure of 989 millibars. And we take a look at the 5-day official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. We'll take a look at the 3-day forecast actually first. And Tropical Storm Humberto is expected to become a hurricane by later tonight as it continues to move off towards the west, off towards the north and eventually towards the northeast over the next coming days here. And this is going to be coming pretty close to Bermuda. The official 3-day forecast is coming pretty close to Bermuda there, and they are well within the 5-day cone of uncertainty here. So interest in Bermuda need to be paying attention to the progress of Humberto as it continues to move off towards the north and east, eventually starting later tonight. For the meantime, though, this is not expected to be a fast-moving system. This is only expected to be moving at about 4 or 5 miles per hour before eventually kind of getting the boot from a trough that is expected to kind of dig down and then connect and kind of bring it on out away from the coastal region of the United States. However, the United States is not completely free from impacts, and what I mean by that is there will be some elevated surf and rip currents along the southeastern United States and potentially even the northeastern United States later in the week. There will be swells that will be radiating outwards, and interest along the southeast coast from Florida to North Carolina, even Virginia, could have elevated rip currents. Certainly something that is something that can kill people and has, and we want you to pay close attention to that. There will be elevated surf, so for any surfers that will be good, but for the general public, just stay out of the waters. There will be rip currents. There will be dangerous high surf conditions, especially for portions of the Florida East Coast experiencing 4 to 8 feet above normal for the surf conditions today across portions of Daytona Beach they have recorded. So just kind of keep mindful of that as this continues to head off towards the north and east over the next coming days here. And we take a look at the latest recon passes. Again, not much. There's not much movement in the system. However, it has strengthened a little bit. You can see the radius of maximum winds have started to sort of condense within this region. However, there is still some evidence that there is some of the higher winds away from the center of circulation. So that is something to be mindful of, that we have not seen a fully condensed system yet, but regardless, pressure 989 on the latest pass from recon, barely moving, if any movement, towards the northwest. However, that will probably curve out towards the northeast here over the coming days, so we'll have to keep monitoring the exact movement of it. But pretty much there is not really a lot of significant activity for the Florida East Coast. There has been some rain showers that have rotated in from time to time, and some of the bands here we've gotten around 0.44 inches of rain, so not a whole lot of rain on the day today, with some gusty winds in those squalls, but certainly not an overall large amount from Humberto. Humberto is pretty far away from the coast, but certainly elevated rip current threats and surf impacts are expected. But going off of the latest recon, about 70 miles an hour, it does seem to fit the narrative here. And we are not seeing any hurricane force winds, but Humberto is strengthening, and we do have another recon pass that will be, we do have another recon flight. NOAA 42 is expected to head in here, and they should be in within another hour or so. They're leaving from Lakeland, Florida. That's their home base. You can see here, this is also from topicaltidbits.com. You can see here, this is the visible satellite here. You do notice, and I'll put this sort of into motion, you do notice the outflow is starting to get going on pretty much every single side here. We've started to see outflow, except on the southern quadrant. There's not a whole lot of outflow still, but this dying convective band over here that was trying to produce its own outflow and that was sort of cutting off the outflow of Humberto to the south is now starting to abate and weaken. There's not a lot left over of this convection. There's still some outflow that's kind of radiating outwards, but not a lot here on the northern side of this convective burst or on Humberto's southern side. So I do suspect that we will start to kind of really see the outflow cranking here over the next coming hours and days. Again, there is still a little bit of shear. There's still some dry air and shear that gets entrained from time to time in the system, but overall we've seen a much better improvement on the storm today, and certainly now it's starting to develop somewhat of an inner core. You could start to see that. We actually had somewhat of a mid-level eye start to appear earlier. That was kind of taken over by a recent convective burst on a hot tower formed on this side and rotated around. But that's also helping to lower the pressures, and eventually the winds will catch up. There is a little bit of a time delay between the pressures falling and the winds catching up in some of these storms. And that's what we're likely seeing here. So we'll likely see a hurricane by later tonight as the pressures continue to fall. A nice central dense overcast has begun to form across this region. And we go to the IR presentation loop, you can start to see what I mean. These towers are sort of rotating in. This big convective burst that developed, here's another one that will rotate in, and your center of circulation is somewhere roughly in about there. And you can see also what I mean, this convective burst across here is no more, and we're starting to see more of that focus in this region. Again, still a little bit of drier air and some shear still impacting the system, but mainly you can see the outflow is cranking on that side. And we go to the NOAA satellites here. This is the 1649 pass of the microwave imagery. So this was a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon, and you can start to see that there is a hint of an eye wall that is starting to form, and this was with that convective burst as it was just beginning off towards the north and pretty much actually just directly due north of the center, which is located about here. And that started to fill in with time, and as that continues to happen, we should start to see more of a true eye wall develop. You can see this was from earlier this morning, roughly about 7 o'clock in the morning. There was almost no eye wall to speak of, and that has improved remarkably since earlier this morning with almost a semi-full eye wall beginning to appear here. You can see this is from the satellite shot here, the zoomed in shot. You can see those hot towers that are developing and rotating around the center. You can see those the hot towers that will sort of move in from time to time as I kind of just rock this between hours here. So this was from about 2031 Zulu time, so not too long ago here. But you can definitely start to see that is developing a nice central dense overcast. There is still a little bit of dry air that you could see sort of being wrapped in from time to time on the system. But for the most part, you could definitely see the outflow that's kind of peaking here. What you don't see is a lot of significant outflow being kicked out to the south, but you do see hints of the outflow pattern right here trying to become loosely established. As I continue to rock that, you could definitely see that becoming loosely established. But you can see this is from almost about 3 o'clock this afternoon going to about 4:31 this afternoon. Definitely a better overall structure to this. Definitely getting a much more circular, rounded appearance in that. And if we go to the IR, or this is the actually the water vapor satellite loop here from about 2:10 this afternoon, you can see there is still some dry air that is coming off the continental United States. This is the big trough right here that will eventually catch Humberto and move it off towards the north and east. So this is the crucial trough that we're watching that is going to catch it, and it seems to be pretty much on time. So really and truly, I don't see anything that's going to surprise us within the track of Humberto here. And if we go to the extent of the tropical storm force winds, this is still coming off the NOAA, the RAMMB site here, and you can actually see we have at least about 20 knots roughly across this flow here, sending some of the flow almost a little bit across here, mainly coming in from this side here and kind of moving out, and that's what's pushing in some of this drier air that has been found by recon. If we go back to recon and we can actually just kind of pull that up, you do see here that we do have a little bit. This is about 1,001 millibars. We'll actually look to where that was taken. That was taken just outside of the storm here. This was the latest pass on 9 here. That was the latest drops on. And you can see there the relative humidity isn't that high, which does suggest that there is a little bit of drier air that is trying to be entrained into the system. But you can mainly see, for the most part, there is almost no shear to speak of on that part, with a nice outflow expanding. So that is the one thing that the shear has started to abate over the last coming hours here. Take a look at the total precipitable water. This is from roughly about 12:56 this afternoon, and you can see a pretty nice, well-established area here. There's still a little bit of drier air that is kind of mixed in here that from time to time does get entrained in the system. You can see some of that here is primitive, with almost no convection from earlier this afternoon, from about 1:49 this afternoon, or excuse me, 12:49 this afternoon. That there was almost no convection on this southwestern side here to kind of speak of, but over the last while, that seamlessly we've started to see more of that convection start to fill in across this region, being definitely something to watch here to see how much this strengthens. But we've started to see Humberto close off its center rather nicely, get a primitive eye wall going, and mix out some of this drier air that's trying to be entrained. Has been mixed out quite well this afternoon, especially later in the day this afternoon, with these hot towers rotating around here, kind of establishing a better eye wall structure. That definitely seems to be kind of the primitive thing here. And if we kind of put this in a play again, you can see what I mean, that we've definitely started to get a lot more of that drier air out of the system, becoming a lot more structurally organized today. So again, a lot to watch still over the coming days for portions of Bermuda. Again, for Bermuda, our folks here in Bermuda, our friends there, will continue to monitor the progress of Tropical Storm Humberto, soon to be Hurricane Humberto here, probably by later tonight, I do believe so. For the southeastern United States and the East Coast, there will be some rip currents and swells that will radiate out later in the week, starting with Florida first today and radiating towards the other coasts later in the week, causing some high surf and rip currents. Again, if you are placed under a situation where they are flying red flags for rip currents, please stay out of the waters. Rip currents can kill even experienced swimmers. So that is not something to take lightly. Again, this will come pretty close to Bermuda here, and we have to see exactly how close. Roughly about 1 to 2 inches of rain expected so far for portions of the Bermuda Islands. So we will continue to monitor the progress of Tropical Storm Humberto, soon to be a hurricane here, probably by later tonight. Again, the main takeaway today is that Humberto, no significant change to the overall track forecast, and Humberto continues to get better organized with a nice central dense overcast forming, and we are now starting to see signs of an eye wall forming, and this is soon to be a hurricane. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening. I will be back with a third and final update by about 9 o'clock this evening, going over some of the 18Z model guidance data. Hope you all have a fantastic evening, and I will be back around 9 o'clock.